this is my review of My Hero Academia. Okay, so in this episode we actually see Tamaki's origin story, more or less, and how he came to be a member of the Big Three, and also why he chose the name Suneater. And also because of that, we actually see him develop more into a hero and get over his nervousness to actually become a fairly competent hero. So it starts off with the group with the heroes all busting into the Shie Hassaikai base, which according to Night Eye's quirk means that they're actually underground and there's actually a secret passage, which Night Eye is able to use his quirk to easily open. But they're immediately attacked by several Hassaikai members who Centipeter and Bubble Girl quickly defeat, and the rest just retreat underground. At which point they find a blockade created by Overhaul using his quirk, and Kirishima and Deku quickly bust through it with their respective quirks. So at which point Mimic, the little gremlin thing that wears the little costume, he uses his quirk to that quirk enhancement joke to actually turn the entire base basically into a twisting underground maze that he can control like it's his own body, which makes it very dangerous. And then using his quirk, he actually drops all of the remaining pro heroes down a hole so that he can deal with the police officers on his own. At which point he drops them into the hole to deal with 3 of the 8 bullets, which are Toya Setsuno, Yu Hojo, and what is his name? Sitsuhabe Tabe, I think is what his name is. But in any case, Toya, Hojo, and Tabe are in the room where the pro heroes land, and during this sequence, what is his name? Realizing how much Mirio actually progresses, realizing how much Mirio is actually dedicated to his goal, mainly because Mirio went off on his own to go try and find Eri by using his quirk, which apparently his costume isn't affected by his quirk because his quirk is made out of his own eyebrows, apparently, which it's woven from a special fiber made of his own hair, so basically he won't be able to phase through it no matter how many times he uses his quirk, which is interesting. But in any case, Mirio went off on his own, and Tamaki, admiring Mirio's heroics, actually decides to take on the 3 of the 8 bullets by himself. And sure enough, he does with Eraserhead using his quirk, which leaves him just enough time to knock them out. And the rest of the heroes escape with Tamaki remarking to Deku to keep an eye on Mirio because he could be getting himself in real trouble if he tries too hard. And Deku nods in acknowledgement and they all leave. At which point and from this point onward, the rest of the fight is Tamaki facing off against these 3 of the 8 bullets. Here's the reason why they were actually dangerous and why Eraserhead erased their quirks. So their quirks work really well together to basically destroy any opponents. And sure enough, Tamaki quickly realizes this when Eraserhead's quirk finally wears off and they're able to use their quirks. So Tamaki tries to use his offensive and defensive capabilities to hold them. He's actually pinned them to a wall at this point using his tentacle thing that he can do. But because of that, they've actually been pinned to the wall. And he tries to knock them out with a punch. But Toya actually uses his quirk to basically disarm Tamaki in an instant and repel him. At which point Hujo uses his own quirk, which enables him to manifest crystals to actually grow out of his bonds. So, and the only one left is Tabe, who got knocked out before the fight even began. And so basically, Tamaki has to find a way to actually defend himself against 2 heroes who have working quirks that work well together. And sure enough, he begins to face off against the 2 of them, eventually recalling the reason why he's called Suneater. So basically, it was Mirio who inspired it. They've been friends since they were actually in elementary school, and ever since Tamaki regarded Mirio as the sun, but Mirio points out to Tamaki when they were younger. The reason Mirio tries so hard is because he's actually been inspired by Tamaki, who also works equally as hard despite being nervous and trying to overcome his own nervousness. Which is how he got the name Suneater, because he basically can devour even the sun, or more or less. So, with that, he actually combines crab shells and tentacles to actually break through the guy's crystals, and unleashes his ultimate move, Chimera Kraken, which basically means that he covers himself in armor and just flails a bunch of tentacles around, which makes him very dangerous. However, it's at this point where Tabe actually decides to wake up and get involved, and Tabe's quirk is pretty much a perfect foil and a perfect counter to Tamaki's. So, Tabe's quirk is food, which means he can basically eat anything and digest it in seconds, which also makes him an unfunctionable member of society because his quirk gives him a very ravenous attitude as a result, since basically anything he eats will be devoured in seconds, he digests it in seconds, and then is immediately hungry again, which made him very hard to function in society, and it's actually explained later that that's exactly why he was outcast from society and became a member of the Shie Hassaikai to begin with. And sure enough, because Tamaki is unable to attack them defensively, he's eventually pinned to the wall by Hujo and has his tentacles stolen by Toya. At which point the three decide to reveal their origin stories. They were all basically they all have their own separate origin stories and were picked up by Overhaul himself. But basically, Toya's was that they were basically discarded like trash once their usefulness was no longer once they were no longer considered useful to the respective parties. Tabe was basically disregarded because, as I said, he's basically a lunatic. He's unable to curb his cravings and was basically outcast from society because he can't function as a human being. Because of how his quirk works, he's unable to actually function as a person. So his quirk basically just rendered him completely unable to function with human society. Toya's is a bit more relatable. He was cast aside by his lover, who left him with mountains of debt. And finally was Hujo, who was asked to use his quirk to actually pull a company out of debt, but once they found out that his quirk would actually only manifested counterfeit crystals, they beat him within an inch of his life. At which point they were all picked up by the Shie Hassaikai and have been best friends ever since. And Tamaki can't help but admire their companionship, pointing out that he also has a similar companionship to Mirio in his own head. And sure enough, decides that the best way to actually deal with them is to turn their own teamwork and camaraderie against them. And he does exactly that. He manifests his foot into a claw, kicks a crystal into Soya's face, which means that his quirk can no longer work because he can't steal what he can't see. And then because Hujo is pinning him to the wall, he was able to actually eat one of Hujo's crystals without him realizing, and he's able to manifest it as armor and use it to repel the attack. And then with that, he's able to actually finally finish them off with one single attack. And because Tabe isn't willing to eat his friends, he backs down immediately as soon as he gets hit by one of his friends, and they're all knocked out. And sure enough, Tamaki remarks that he admires their camaraderie, and while he doesn't really condone where it's coming from, he does admire their camaraderie and admires that they weren't willing to defeat each other just to take a shot at Tamaki, remarking, and I quote, "Friends don't eat friends." So, yeah, basically this entire episode was about Tamaki and his progression to becoming a hero. So here's the thing about Tamaki. His one weakness is that he's self-conscious. When that self-consciousness goes away, like it did in this episode, he becomes a very dangerous opponent. And sure enough, Fat Gum remarks that that's really his only weakness. Once that weakness goes away, he's basically unstoppable. So for that reason, Fat Gum was willing to let Tamaki handle it on his own, and he could. He did. He worked very hard to do it, and he worked hard. But yeah. The main reason why he decides to work so hard and become a better hero is because of Mirio. Mirio was the first friend he ever made upon moving to the new school system, and they've been best friends ever since. And because of Mirio's upbeat optimism being a parallel to Tamaki's shy hide in the corner personality, they kind of bounced off each other, and eventually Tamaki slowly came out of his shell more and more as he became friends with Mirio, eventually culminating in this episode with him finally finally becoming the hero he was destined to be, to actually just take these 3 of the more powerful members of the Shie Hassaikai apart. So, yeah, that's a pretty powerful message for this episode to give, and I like it. It's a very strong episode. It's like, no matter who you are, you can become a hero. If you're the shy nerdy kid who just likes to hide in a corner, you can become a hero too. It doesn't matter your origins or what your quirk is or how it works or how hard you try. You can be the inspiration for somebody else. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Mirio was inspired by Tamaki as much as Tamaki was inspired by Mirio, so the two kind of bounced off each other all the way up until they became the big 3 of UA. So, yeah, but with that, the rest of the heroes are now going to continue through the maze complex and try to eventually take down Mimic, who I should remind you is now completely controlling the Shie Hasaikai's underground base basically like a living maze. So they have to eventually find him and shut him down, or they're not going to be able to progress and actually save Eri. So, yeah, with that, I think I'm gonna leave this episode here. So that was my review of My Hero Academia. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks on my way saying thanks. So be sure to check this out in the description below as well. In any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!